Welcome to your channel Silent Mind Studio, and thank you for listening to us. Today we're taking a deep dive into a topic that's, well, it's incredibly exciting, but also, let's be honest, a little bit daunting. We're looking at the dynamic intersection of drugs, and we mean everything: pharmaceuticals, recreational substances, and artificial intelligence.
Right. And we've got quite a stack of sources here: research papers, market reports, detailed analyses from experts. It's a really comprehensive look.
And our mission today really is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge from all this material.
Yeah, think of this deep dive as like your shortcut to getting properly informed. We want you to understand how AI is reshaping everything from, life-saving medicines to addiction treatment.
And also, crucially, how drug research itself and the societal issues around drugs are actually feeding back and influencing AI development. It's a two-way street.
Absolutely.
What really jumped out at me from the start reading through these sources was this core question they pose. It really captures the dual nature of it all.
What's the question?
It's basically, can AI, which is now designing life-saving drugs in months, not years, and hitting these amazing 80–90% success rates in phase I trials for AI-developed drugs?
Which is incredible in itself.
Right. Can that same powerful technology also be the key to predicting and maybe even mitigating the next wave of designer psychoactive substances? Or could it inadvertently end up fueling their creation?
Yeah. That really is the crux of it, isn't it? The double-edged sword. That question sets up the central tension we'll be exploring throughout this deep dive.
Exactly. So we'll be covering AI's massive role in pharma first discovery, development, clinical trials, personalized medicine.
Then we'll pivot to the, let's say, trickier relationship between AI and recreational substances. So looking at addiction treatment, misuse detection, but also the pretty significant risks involved.
And like you said, that feedback loop, how drug research, especially neuroscience, and the data challenges, the social factors around drugs, how they're shaping AI itself.
And finally, we absolutely have to wrestle with the big ethical questions, the societal impact, the regulatory hurdles. It's huge. Before we look ahead to future directions.
This convergence, it really feels like more than just a tech shift. The sources frame it as a paradigm shift.
It absolutely is. Across health, science, society, it's packed with potential for amazing good, but also comes with these significant challenges and risks that need, well, careful navigation. A very forward-thinking approach is required.
Okay, let's get into it then. Section 1. AI's role in drug development and pharmacology. The sources are unequivocal. AI isn't just making small improvements, it's fundamentally changing the whole pharmaceutical pipeline.
That's the key takeaway right from the start. It's not just automating old steps. AI is enabling entirely new ways of doing things, from the very beginning to the very end.
And the promise there is, what, big gains in efficiency, cost reduction?
Exactly. Significant efficiency gains, potentially huge cost reductions, and, maybe the most exciting part, improved success rates for getting new drugs actually to patients who need them.
Which is desperately needed because the traditional way is just notoriously slow and expensive, right?
Oh, incredibly so.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a process typically takes 10 to 15 years. 15 years.
Yeah.
And the cost, the average figure cited is around $2.6 billion to bring one new drug to market.
$2.6 billion? That's staggering.
It is. And even with that massive investment, the failure rate is incredibly high. So many promising candidates just don't make it through development or clinical trials. AI is really poised to dramatically shake up this traditional, often frustrating model.
And it's not just talk, is it? The market confidence seems really high looking at the numbers in these reports.
The numbers are pretty mind-blowing, actually. They show a strong belief that AI is a major future value driver. Biopharma Trend, for example. They're projecting AI could generate somewhere between $350 billion and $410 billion annually for the pharma sector by 2025.
350 to 410 billion. That's enormous.
It is. And if you look at the overall global AI in pharma market, it was estimated around, $1.94 billion in 2025. Forecasted to just explode to over $16 billion by 2034.
That kind of growth, what's that, a 27% compound annual growth rate? That signals more than just steady progress. That's transformation.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And if you drill down just into the AI and drug discovery segment, just that piece, the numbers are even more striking. Valued at about $1.7 billion in 2024, expected to hit over $8.5 billion by 2030. That's a CAGR of over 30%.
Wow.
These are just big numbers. They really highlight the economic drivers and the widespread conviction that AI is becoming indispensable.
And the big companies are already on board.
Oh, yeah. Major players, AstraZeneca, Janssen, Roche, They're not just dipping their toes in. They're making substantial investments in AI right now, not just for discovery, but for things like optimizing complex clinical trials, too. It's becoming core strategy.
Okay, so let's dive into that discovery phase. How exactly is AI reshaping the methods we use to find new drugs?
Well, it starts right at the beginning, with target identification and validation. AI algorithms are just incredibly good at crunching the enormous, complex biological data sets we have now.
You mean things like genomics, proteomics?
Exactly. Genomics gene data, proteomics protein data, transcriptomics which genes are active, plus, wading through mountains of scientific literature, patent databases, anonymized clinical records, all of it.
It's like having a super fast research team that can connect dots across billions of data points instantly.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah. They sift through all this information to identify and then prioritize novel disease.
Yeah.
Target specific proteins or genes involved in the disease that a drug could potentially interact with.
And they do this much faster than humans could.
Oh, orders of magnitude faster, and with a precision we couldn't achieve before. There are examples like Google's AI co-scientist system, which is specifically designed to generate hypotheses and pinpoint targets by processing this vast biomedical info.
And it's not just finding targets, is it? The sources mentioned druggability.
That's right. It's not enough to find a target. You need to know if you can actually design a drug to hit it effectively. AI can help assess that druggability, predicting whether a potential target can realistically be modulated by a drug molecule.
Makes sense. Knowing you can actually hit the target is crucial.
Absolutely. And once you have potential targets, AI transforms how we find or design the compounds, the potential drugs. It massively accelerates what's called virtual screening.
So computer simulations instead of physical experiments.
Exactly. Instead of painstakingly testing thousands of compounds in a lab, AI can screen massive digital libraries, sometimes millions or even billions of potential drug molecules against a target in a simulation, evaluating their likely properties incredibly quickly.
That must save a huge amount of time and resources.
Immense. But here's where it gets, I think, even more revolutionary. AI isn't just screening existing molecules. It enables de novo drug design.
De novo, meaning from scratch.
Precisely. The AI algorithms can actually generate completely novel molecular structures, ones that have never existed before, specifically designed to meet certain therapeutic goals, like binding tightly to a target protein while having good safety properties.
Wow. AI as a molecular architect creating brand new drug candidates.
Exactly. Companies like In Silico Medicine are real pioneers in using this kind of generative AI. It's cutting-edge stuff.
And the impact of this, is it significant?
The estimates suggest it is. One projection mentioned in the sources is that by 2025, maybe as much as 30% of all newly discovered drugs could originate from these AI-driven methodologies.
30%, that's a huge chunk of the discovery pipeline shifting to AI.
It indicates a major transformation underway.
And all this speed and efficiency in the early stages must translate into reducing the overall time and cost of drug development, right? That's the big promise.
That's where the potential is truly transformative, yes. Integrating AI isn't just about speeding up one step. It's about compressing the whole timeline and reducing the staggering costs. Traditionally, the discovery phase alone might take 4 to 5 years.
4 to 5 years just to find a candidate molecule.
Right. AI has shown it can potentially condense that down to something like 12 to 18 months.
That's shaving years off just the beginning.
Exactly. And we're seeing real examples. In Silico Medicine, again, they took a novel drug for idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF, a serious lung disease.
Where the AI found both the target and the drug candidate.
Yes, both identified using their generative AI. They went from that initial discovery all the way into phase I human trials in under 30 months. That's incredibly fast compared to historical timelines.
Under 2.5 years from AI concept to human testing.
It's remarkable. Some analyses suggest these AI-enabled workflows could save up to 40% of the time and 30% of the cost just to get to the preclinical candidate stage.
Okay, and overall, for the entire drug development process.
Looking at the bigger picture, some projections estimate AI could potentially cut the total development time by maybe 4 years, and the savings could be in the ballpark of $26 billion per drug.
4 years faster and $26 billion cheaper per drug. Those are absolutely game-changing numbers.
They really are. It could fundamentally alter the economics of pharma and how quickly we get new medicines.
Another huge breakthrough mentioned frequently is AlphaFold.
Ah, yes, DeepMind's AlphaFold. That was a pivotal moment.
For protein structure prediction, right? Why was that so important for drug discovery?
Because understanding the precise three-dimensional shape of a protein is absolutely crucial for designing a drug molecule that can bind to it effectively, like designing a key to fit a specific lock. Before AlphaFold, determining protein structures experimentally was often slow, difficult, or sometimes impossible for certain proteins.
So AlphaFold basically unlocked the structures for countless potential drug targets.
Exactly. It accurately predicts the 3D structure from just the protein's amino acid sequence. This has revolutionized structural biology and made an unprecedented number of protein targets accessible for what's called structure-based drug design. It's incredibly valuable for designing drugs against novel targets or pathogens, where getting experimental structures is hard.
It really opened up a whole new landscape for drug designers.
It absolutely did.
And we're not just talking theory here. The sources list several concrete success stories.
Yes, the tangible impact is becoming clearer. We mentioned in silico medicine's IPF drug, Rentosertib. It came from their AI platform and showed promising results in early phase 2 trials. And just look at their pipeline between 2021 and 2024. They nominated 22 drug candidates developed using AI.
22 candidates in just 3 years.
And remarkably, 10 of those have already progressed into human clinical trials. That really shows the velocity AI can bring to filling the development pipeline.
10 drugs in clinical trials already. That's impressive speed.
It really highlights the difference AI makes in those early stages. Another great example is Benevolent AI.
They were involved in finding a COVID-19 treatment, weren't they?
That's right. Famously, during the pandemic, they used their AI platform to rapidly analyze vast amounts of biomedical literature and data. In just 3 days, they identified baricitinib, which was an existing drug for rheumatoid arthritis, as a potential treatment for COVID-19.
3 days. That's incredible speed in a crisis.
It shows the power of AI for drug repurposing, finding new uses for existing drugs, which is much faster than developing something new from scratch. They also have major collaborations, using AI for target ID with companies like AstraZeneca and Merck KGaA, and they're applying it to neglected diseases like dengue fever too.
So AI finding new uses for old drugs, especially fast in emergencies and tackling neglected diseases. Powerful applications.
Absolutely. And then there's Exscientia. They worked with Sumitomo Dainippon Pharma using their Centaur Chemist AI platform.
Centaur Chemist. Sounds futuristic.
Doesn't it? They co-developed a drug candidate, DSP-1181, for obsessive-compulsive disorder. This was one of the very first drugs designed using AI to enter human clinical trials. And the discovery phase for it took less than 12 months.
Less than a year compared to the usual 4 or 5 years.
Exactly. It really underscores the acceleration generative AI can offer in the design part of discovery.
And Recursion Pharmaceuticals.
Another example of tangible results. Their AI platform identified an oncology candidate, REC-1245, and moved it through the necessary preclinical steps to get ready for human trials in under 18 months. The industry average for that stage is closer to 42 months.
Okay, so multiple companies are demonstrating real-world success using AI to discover drugs faster and more efficiently.
Exactly. These aren't just hypotheticals anymore. AI is actively delivering results today.
But it's not all smooth sailing, is it? The
Well,
sources also point out some emerging challenges.
No, absolutely not. The rapid progress creates its own set of problems. One interesting one is termed the pipeline paradox.
The pipeline paradox. What's that?
It's the idea that AI is now so fast at the in silico discovery stage, generating promising drug candidates computationally, that it's creating a bottleneck further down the line.
You mean the later stages, like testing and trials, can't keep up?
Precisely. The physical preclinical testing, the complex process of scaling up manufacturing, the long and expensive clinical trial phases, and then regulatory review, none of those have accelerated at quite the same dramatic pace as AI-driven discovery.
So you end up with a traffic jam, lots of AI candidates waiting in line for the slower parts of the process.
That's the concern. A surplus of AI-generated candidates might be waiting for these slower, real-world validation steps. This could, ironically, delay getting these discoveries to patients, despite the initial speed gains.
Solved one bottleneck, created another one.
It's a system challenge. Another significant hurdle is the black box problem with some advanced AI models.
Meaning we don't always understand how the AI reaches its conclusions.
Exactly. Some deep learning models, for instance, are incredibly complex, and their decision-making processes aren't easily interpretable by humans. This lack of transparency, especially when combined with reliance on proprietary data sets or algorithms, makes it difficult for independent researchers or regulatory bodies to fully validate the AI's findings or reproduce its results.
So even if the AI suggests a great drug candidate, if you can't understand why, it's hard to trust it completely.
It can definitely hinder broader scientific acceptance and regulatory trust. If you can't follow the reasoning, how can you be sure it's sound, especially when patient safety is involved? Trust in the process is paramount in medicine.
That makes perfect sense. You need confidence in how a potential medicine was identified.
Okay, moving beyond discovery, AI is also making huge waves in clinical trials. This is arguably the most costly and time-consuming part of the whole process.
Right, the human testing phase. How's AI making an impact there?
Several ways. First, optimizing trial design. AI can analyze massive amounts of data, historical trial results, real-world patient data from electronic health records, EHRs, specific patient characteristics to help design clinical trials that are more efficient, more targeted, and potentially more likely to succeed.
So smarter trial designs from the outset.
Yes, and it also enables more adaptive trial designs. These are trials where the protocol isn't rigidly fixed from the start. Based on interim results analyzed by AI, researchers might be able to adjust things like dosage levels or the number of participants needed, making the trial more flexible and responsive.
Adaptive trials, that sounds much more efficient than sticking to a plan that might not be optimal.
It offers greater flexibility. Another huge bottleneck AI tackles is patient selection and recruitment. Finding the right patients who meet the specific criteria for a trial is traditionally a major headache and a huge source of delays.
Yeah, I've heard that can take months or even years.
It can. AI really streamlines this. It can rapidly scan through EHRs, genomic data, even unstructured text in doctor's notes or sometimes discussions on social media platforms to identify potentially eligible patients much more quickly and accurately.
Using social media data to find trial participants. That's interesting.
It's an example of leveraging diverse data sources. Platforms like TrialGPT are being developed to automatically match patients to suitable trials based on their detailed medical history and the complex inclusion-exclusion criteria of trials.
And this helps with diversity too, you mentioned.
Potentially, yes. By casting a wider net and using objective criteria, AI can help ensure that trial populations are more representative of the real-world patients who will eventually use the drug. Improving trial diversity is crucial for health equity.
Absolutely. A drug needs to work for everyone who might take it.
AI also plays a big role in outcome prediction and monitoring during the trial. AI models can analyze preclinical data, historical trial results, and real-world data to predict the likelihood of a trial succeeding even before it starts, or to forecast potential adverse events.
Predicting success or failure early on, that could save a lot of wasted effort.
Potentially, yes. And during the trial, AI, coupled with wearable devices and sensors, allows for continuous, real-time monitoring of patients' physiological data, heart rate, sleep patterns, activity levels.
So catching side effects or responses much faster.
Exactly. Potential side effects or positive responses to treatment can often be detected much earlier than through traditional periodic clinic visits. This offers a potential safety benefit for participants.
Real-time monitoring definitely sounds safer.
And in specific situations, AI enables something called synthetic control arms.
Synthetic control arms, what are those?
Okay, imagine you're testing a drug for a very rare disease. Finding enough patients for a traditional control group who receive a placebo or standard care can be extremely difficult or even impossible. Or sometimes, using a placebo is unethical if the disease is life-threatening and the new drug shows promise.
Right, so how do you compare the new drug's effect?
AI can help create a virtual or synthetic control group. It uses historical data and real-world data from similar patients who meet the trial criteria but aren't in the current trial to model how they likely would have fared without the new drug. This simulates the outcomes of a control group.
So you're using data to create a comparison group, reducing the need for actual patients in the placebo arm.
Exactly. It can make trials feasible for rare diseases or other situations where traditional control groups are problematic. It's a very clever use of data.
That is clever. It overcomes a real logistical and ethical hurdle.
And when you put all these applications together, smarter design, faster recruitment, predictive monitoring, synthetic controls the potential for cost and time savings in clinical trials is enormous.
What kind of numbers are we talking about?
The sources mention projected efficiencies like potential cost savings of up to 70% per trial.
70%.
And potential reductions in trial timelines by as much as 80%. Predictive AI, by improving patient selection and site selection, also aims to cut the high failure rates of clinical trials by up to 30%.
Those are staggering figures that would completely change the economics and speed of drug approval.
It really would. It's a key area where AI's impact could be most profound.
Okay, so AI helps discover drugs, helps test them.
Mhm.
What about after a drug is approved and on the market?
That's where pharmacovigilance comes in, monitoring drug safety after approval. And AI is significantly enhancing this too,
How does AI improve safety surveillance?
mainly through real-time side effect monitoring. AI systems, using natural language processing, NLP, and machine learning, ML, can continuously scan and analyze vast, diverse streams of data in real time.
What kind of data?
Electronic health records, sure, but also reports from social media, patient forums, clinical notes written by doctors, and official regulatory databases like the FDA's FAST system or the EMA's Vigilance.
So it's not just waiting for formal reports. The AI is actively listening across all these channels for signals of potential problems.
Exactly. It can process this immense volume of messy, unstructured data far faster and potentially more accurately than humans relying on manual review. This means potential adverse drug events, ADEs, or unexpected drug interactions can be detected much earlier.
Allowing for quicker warnings or regulatory action.
Precisely. Swifter detection enables swifter action to protect patient safety. AI can also be used for predictive analytics for ADRs, trying to predict which types of patients might be at higher risk for specific side effects based on their genetics, demographics, or other health data.
Predicting who might have a bad reaction, that's powerful for prevention.
It holds that promise. But, like in other areas, there are challenges in applying AI to pharmacovigilance.
Such as?
Well, the data itself is very heterogeneous, coming from so many different sources with varying quality. The black box interpretability issue remains, why did the AI flag this potential signal? And the regulatory landscape for using AI in safety monitoring is still evolving. Techniques like federated learning are being explored to analyze data across multiple hospitals for safety signals without needing to pool all the sensitive patient data in one place, which helps with privacy.
Right. Data privacy is a huge consideration with health information.
Absolutely. And this brings us nicely to personalized medicine, where AI is a key enabler.
Tailoring treatment to the individual, right? The holy grail, almost.
That's the vision, yes. AI algorithms analyze a patient's unique combination of data, their genetics, their observable traits, phenotype, environmental factors, lifestyle, medical history, to predict how they are likely to respond to different drugs.
So moving away from the one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. It aims to customize treatment plans for better effectiveness and potentially fewer side effects. It's about precision. A key area here is pharmacogenomics.
Using genetics to guide drug choice.
Yes. AI integrates a patient's genomic data with their clinical information to identify links between specific genes and how the body processes or responds to certain drugs. This can help predict which patients will benefit most from a drug, who might experience severe side effects, guiding drug selection, and, importantly, dosage.
So in theory, my DNA could tell an AI which antidepressant is best for me, specifically.
That's precisely the kind of goal pharmacogenomics is working towards in fields like psychiatry, oncology, and others. But achieving this level of personalization relies heavily on having access to massive, diverse, and longitudinal data sets. Think large biobanks and comprehensive EHR systems.
And that brings back the data challenges, doesn't it? Privacy, security, access.
It's a critical bottleneck. Balancing the need for vast amounts of data to train effective AI models with the absolute requirement to protect patient privacy and data security is a central tension in personalized medicine.
Looking across all these applications in pharma, what are the big overarching challenges that keep coming up?
Well, as we just touched on, data limitations are fundamental. The effectiveness of any AI model is constrained by the quality, diversity, and accessibility of the data it learns from. If the data has biases, errors, or significant gaps, the AI's output will be unreliable or skewed.
Garbage in, garbage out, basically.
Essentially, yes. And this is especially critical for personalized medicine, where understanding the full spectrum of human variability is key. If certain groups, racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, are underrepresented in the training data, the AI tools might simply not work as well for them, potentially worsening existing health disparities.
So biased data leads to biased AI, which leads to inequitable healthcare.
That's a major risk that needs constant attention and mitigation strategies. Another big challenge is the need for a skill set evolution within the pharma industry itself.
Meaning the people working there need new skills.
Yes. As pharma R&D relies more on AI, there's a growing demand for data scientists, AI and machine learning specialists, bioinformaticians, people who can build, validate, and deploy these tools effectively. But crucially, they need to work hand in hand with the traditional biologists, chemists, and clinicians.
So breaking down silos between the tech experts and the domain experts.
Exactly. It requires much more interdisciplinary collaboration. Traditional researchers need to become more data literate and understand AI's capabilities and limitations, while AI experts need to gain a real appreciation for the biological and clinical context of the problems they're solving. It's a cultural and educational shift.
Sounds like a significant workforce transformation is needed.
It is, and it's already underway.
Okay. We've covered a lot on AI's massive impact on the pharmaceutical side. Discovery, trials, safety, personalization. It's truly transformative. We'll pause here for just a moment. If you're finding this deep dive into how technology is fundamentally reshaping major industries like medicine interesting, this is a perfect time to subscribe to the channel and follow us.
Yeah, if you're interested in content like this, we delve into fascinating topics that intrigue us every day. Your support helps us keep exploring these important intersections.
All right, let's shift gears now. We're moving into Section 2, AI and recreational drug use. The sources immediately highlight a kind of dual nature here.
Yes, this is where the picture gets really complex and, frankly, ethically challenging. On one hand, AI offers some really innovative tools that could be incredibly helpful for addiction treatment, for public health surveillance of drug use, and for harm reduction efforts.
So potential for good, helping people dealing with substance use issues.
Definitely. But on the other hand, AI introduces some significant ethical dilemmas and risks in this area, particularly the potential for AI to be misused in creating new dangerous drugs and concerns about intrusive surveillance.
A technology that could help people recover, but also potentially be used to create the very substances causing harm. That's a stark contrast.
It really is. Let's look first at the positive side, addiction treatment. AI is being explored and, in some cases, already implemented to enhance recovery. One key area is risk prediction.
Using AI to figure out who might be susceptible to addiction.
Exactly. AI models analyze diverse data EHRs, maybe social data, genetic info, behavioral patterns to predict an individual's risk of developing a substance use disorder, with a lot of current focus on opioid use disorder, OUD, given the ongoing crisis.
Is there evidence this works?
Yes. The sources mention an NIH-funded AI screening tool used in hospitals. It identified adults admitted for other reasons who were at high risk for OUD. Implementing the screening was linked to a really significant 47% reduction in 30-day hospital readmissions for those patients.
Wow, nearly half readmissions. That's a concrete benefit.
And it saved significant healthcare costs, too, around $109,000 in just an 8-month study. It shows how AI can enable earlier intervention and better management.
Any other examples?
Another study mentioned a hybrid AI model, EXT-HBOS, which achieved 90% accuracy in predicting drug risk consumption in their study population. Interestingly, it identified the personality trait of neuroticism as a key predictor in their model.
Interesting that AI is picking up on psychological factors like that.
It shows the kind of complex patterns AI can potentially identify. Beyond prediction, AI offers possibilities for personalized rehabilitation.
Tailoring addiction treatment instead of generic programs.
Right, moving beyond standard protocols, AI can analyze a patient's specific data, their history, how they're responding to treatment, their progress to help clinicians create more individualized and hopefully more effective recovery plans. There's a system called Kipu, for instance, that uses AI to analyze patient history and progress, providing insights to providers to inform their decisions and track outcomes better.
That makes intuitive sense. Addiction is so personal, treatment should ideally be personalized too.
It aligns with the broader trend towards personalized medicine. Another area is using AI for monitoring recovery, often involving AI-powered chatbots and wearable devices.
Chatbots for addiction support. How does that work?
Yeah, chatbots like Clarame, Limbic Care, Therabot, eMole. They're designed to provide 24/7 mental health and addiction support. A key benefit is offering accessible, non-judgmental interaction, which can be huge given the stigma around seeking help for substance use.
So someone can talk to the chatbot anytime without feeling judged.
Exactly. They can help users practice difficult conversations, provide information about addiction and recovery, psychoeducation, and some studies, like one on Therabot, have shown they can help reduce symptoms like depression and anxiety.
Having round-the-clock, stigma-free support available seems incredibly valuable.
It definitely fills a gap, but it's important to note their limitations. They might not be suitable for severe addiction or crisis situations. Clear protocols for when the AI needs to escalate to a human helper are absolutely crucial. They augment care, they don't replace humans.
Got it. And wearables. How are Fitbits or Apple Watches used?
Wearables, along with specialized AI apps like Prita, monitor physiological data, heart rate, sleep, activity. Some even analyze behavioral indicators, like changes in communication patterns detected via smartphone usage.
Analyzing how someone uses their phone.
Potentially, yes, looking for deviations from baseline patterns. The AI analyzes this continuous data stream, looking for subtle early signs that might indicate a potential relapse is imminent.
So the AI tries to spot trouble before it happens.
That's the goal. If it detects concerning patterns, it can trigger timely interventions, maybe an alert to a therapist or a supportive message from an app.
Using objective data for early warning. Interesting. But are there issues?
Oh, definitely. There are challenges with these monitoring tools. Big questions around the accuracy and reliability of wearable data, the risk of alert fatigue, too many false alarms causing people to ignore them, and critically, major concerns about data privacy and security.
Yeah, the privacy aspect seems huge here. This is incredibly sensitive data.
It absolutely is.
Okay.
And that leads directly to what the sources call the personalization versus privacy paradox in addiction treatment.
Personalization versus privacy. Meaning,
for AI to be really effective at personalizing addiction care, it needs access to very detailed, granular, highly sensitive personal data about someone's history, behavior, health status. But because of the intense stigma surrounding substance use, people are often deeply afraid that this very data could be exposed.
afraid of consequences, legal, social, employment.
Exactly. So if people don't trust that their data will be kept private and secure, they might withhold crucial information or just avoid using these AI tools altogether.
Which undermines the whole point of personalization, because the AI doesn't get the data it needs.
Precisely. It limits the effectiveness and reach of these potentially helpful tools, especially for vulnerable populations who might already distrust surveillance or data collection systems. It's a really tough knot to untangle.
A very difficult balance to strike.
Okay, shifting from treatment to detection. AI is also being deployed for drug misuse detection, identifying illicit substances and tracking misuse patterns.
How does AI help track illegal drugs?
One major application is identifying new psychoactive substances, or NPS. These designer drugs pop up constantly, posing a huge challenge for law enforcement and public health because they're unknown.
Right, labs don't even know what they're looking for sometimes.
Exactly. The sources mention a platform called NPS-MS from the University of Alberta. It uses deep learning to analyze the spectrographic data, basically the chemical fingerprint of an unknown substance. And it can predict the likely chemical makeup of a new NPS, even if there's no existing reference standard for it.
Wow. It can identify a brand new drug just from its signature. That's powerful for forensic labs.
It's a critical tool, offering an early warning system. But here's that dual-edged sword again, very sharply.
The potential for misuse of that same predictive power.
Exactly. The knowledge of how to predict, or even potentially design, such novel compounds, even if developed for forensic or defensive purposes, could theoretically be exploited by those wanting to create new, dangerous drugs. If the AI tools, the data, or the underlying principles aren't incredibly secure, it fuels a dangerous cat-and-mouse game.
The tech built to identify new drugs could be reverse engineered to make them faster? That's deeply concerning.
It highlights the absolute need for robust security and perhaps restricted access to these kinds of powerful, predictive AI systems. It's a classic dual-use dilemma.
A really stark one. What about tracking trafficking patterns?
AI is increasingly used there too. Law enforcement agencies like the DEA and DHS in the U.S. are using AI combined with open-source intelligence, OSINT data, from public sources and geospatial analytics.
What do they do with that?
They use it to map complex drug trafficking networks, try to predict smuggler movements, trace online sales of precursor chemicals needed to make drugs, and identify distribution hotspots in communities.
Using data analytics to try and get ahead of the traffickers.
That's the idea. The sources mention specific initiatives like Operation Blue Lotus and Operation Apollo, which reportedly leveraged these kinds of AI-driven analyses, looking at social media, financial records, shipping data, sensor networks to interdict drugs and disrupt trafficking operations.
So AI as an analytical advantage for law enforcement.
And it's also used in public health surveillance related to drug use. AI algorithms analyze public health data, EHRs, pharmacy records, death certificates to spot patterns.
Like what kind of patterns?
Things like detecting drug diversion, where prescription drugs are stolen or misused within healthcare facilities, or identifying previously unknown side effects of medications by analyzing population-level data, or monitoring broader trends in drug abuse over time. There's an AI tool called Protonus for example, designed specifically to detect potential drug diversion inside hospitals or pharmacies by analyzing patterns in how medications are handled by staff.
Using AI to spot internal theft or misuse adds a layer of accountability.
It aims to. But all these applications, helpful as they might seem, raise very significant ethical concerns.
The biggest one seems to be AI actually enabling drug synthesis for harmful purposes.
Yes, this is identified as a grave and, importantly, a demonstrated risk. We talked about AI's power in molecular modeling and synthesis prediction for good drugs. That same power could be deliberately misused to design novel, more potent, more addictive, or simply more dangerous psychoactive substances, or even chemical weapons.
You mentioned that experiment.
Yes, the striking 2021 experiment where an AI designed for beneficial drug discovery was deliberately tasked with generating toxic molecules. Within just 6 hours, it proposed over 40,000 structures,
40,000 toxic structures in 6 hours.
including known nerve agents like VX and many completely novel compounds predicted to be highly lethal. It's a chilling proof of concept.
It really drives home that dual-use problem. The same tool for saving lives could be used for mass harm.
Exactly. It poses profound regulatory and control challenges unlike anything we faced before with traditional chemistry.
And then there's the surveillance overreach and privacy issue again.
Yes, using AI for misuse detection, addiction monitoring, public health tracking, all of it involves collecting and analyzing incredibly sensitive personal data. This raises huge privacy concerns.
Balancing public health needs versus individual privacy rights?
It's a critical balancing act, made even harder by the stigma around substance use. Key ethical questions revolve around data security. Truly informed consent. Do people really understand how their data is used? The risk of algorithmic bias leading to unfair targeting or surveillance, and the need for transparency in how these AI systems work.
It feels like the potential for misuse of surveillance data in this area is particularly high.
It is. And the increasing use of monitoring tools, wearables, chatbots could inadvertently normalize a level of surveillance in personal health that makes people uncomfortable or blurs the lines of consent and autonomy.
Especially for vulnerable people in treatment. You mentioned they might feel pressured to agree to monitoring.
That's a real concern. Does consent truly mean the same thing if agreeing to monitoring feels like a condition for receiving care? And what happens to all that detailed behavioral and physiological data collected long term? Who gets access? Insurers, employers, the legal system. These are critical questions that need clear answers and robust safeguards.
The long-term implications of that data collection are worrying.
And finally, there's the risk of algorithmic bias amplifying disparities. We touched on this with pharma, but it's perhaps even more acute here.
Oh, so?
If AI tools for addiction, risk prediction, or treatment recommendations, or maybe even informing sentencing in drug-related court cases, if these tools are trained on data reflecting historical inequities.
Like biased arrest rates or unequal access to treatment for certain communities?
Exactly. If the AI learns from that biased data, it can end up perpetuating or even worsening those disparities. It might flag individuals from certain communities as higher risk or less likely to succeed in treatment without accounting for the systemic reasons behind the historical data patterns, things like poverty, lack of transport, culturally incompetent services.
So the AI could essentially automate and scale up existing biases.
That's the danger. It could lead to AI systems making recommendations or assessments that are less effective, unfair, or downright discriminatory for marginalized groups, reinforcing systemic inequities through supposedly objective technology.
Okay, that really covers the complex and often troubling picture of AI and recreational substances, a mix of helpful potential and very serious risks.
It's a very challenging area, no doubt.
There's definitely a lot to think about there. And remember, if you're finding this deep dive into the complex ways technology intersects with societal issues valuable, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and follow us wherever you're listening.
If you are interested in content like this, we discuss topics that intrigue us every day. Your support really does help us keep producing these in-depth explorations.
All right, we've talked a lot about how AI is impacting the world of drugs, but the influence flows the other way too, right? Section 3, the influence of drugs on AI development.
Yes, this is that fascinating reciprocal relationship, the feedback loop that often gets overlooked. It's about how drugs, their effects on the brain, the societal phenomena around them, are actually shaping AI research, its applications, and the data we use to build it.
Okay, how does that work? Let's start with neuroscience and AI. How does studying drugs inform AI models?
Well, studying how psychoactive substances affect the brain provides an incredibly rich source of data and, maybe more importantly, inspiration for building more sophisticated AI.
Inspiration. How so?
Think about it. Decades of research show how substances like psychedelics, stimulants, opioids, they modulate brain function, they alter cognition, perception, even consciousness itself in profound ways. This knowledge gives us invaluable data and conceptual frameworks about how minds, biological minds, at least work.
And AI researchers can use that knowledge.
Exactly. It's being leveraged to develop AI cognitive architectures that are more nuanced, more biologically plausible. Some are even using it to build rudimentary models, attempting to simulate aspects of artificial consciousness.
So studying altered states helps us model, potentially, artificial states.
That's one line of thinking. Take psychedelics, for instance. We know they alter brain connectivity patterns, like suppressing the default mode network, and they seem to promote neuroplasticity. These insights into unusual brain dynamics can inspire novel AI learning algorithms, or models designed to simulate things like creative thought, psychological flexibility, or different states of awareness.
Are companies actually doing this?
Yes, the sources mention companies like Mind State Design Labs. They're using AI to map the subjective experiences and the neurobiological effects of psychedelics, with the goal of eventually designing compounds that could induce specific, tailored conscious experiences, likely for therapeutic use.
Designing drugs for specific subjective experiences. That sounds incredibly advanced.
That's pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
There's also the entropic brain theory, which came partly from psychedelic neuroimaging. It suggests that states like being on psychedelics or even REM sleep involve higher entropy or complexity in brain activity, which is normally suppressed in regular waking consciousness. This concept could influence AI models trying to simulate a wider spectrum of awareness or more free-flowing creative processing.
So it's like using drugs as a probe to understand the operating system of the brain and then trying to replicate some of those functions or states in AI.
That's a good way to put it. And AI itself is becoming crucial within drug research, especially psychedelic research. It's used to predict therapeutic outcomes, analyze complex brain imaging data, fMRI, EEG, and help understand the mechanisms of action.
It's a real feedback loop then.
Absolutely. It also ties into computational psychiatry, where AI builds quantitative models of brain function based on what we see in mental illnesses, conditions often treated with psychoactive meds. The goal is to understand the illness mechanisms better and predict treatment response.
AI helps understand mental illness, drugs treat mental illness, studying the drugs helps AI understand the brain. Circular.
It is. And the current psychedelic renaissance, the renewed interest and reduced stigma around these compounds, that could actually be a catalyst for AI research into consciousness and complex cognition.
How so? More research means more data.
Exactly. More research means more rich, multimodal data, brain scans, subjective reports, biochemical info collected during these non-ordinary states of consciousness. This data could be invaluable for training AI models that aim to go beyond just performing specific tasks, potentially informing attempts at artificial general intelligence or AI that can understand a wider range of human experiences.
So the renewed focus on psychedelics might inadvertently boost AI's quest to understand consciousness. Fascinating.
It's a compelling possibility. However, a major roadblock in developing good AI models in any drug-related field comes down to data challenges.
We keep coming back to data quality, don't we? Is it particularly bad with drug data?
It's a persistent and significant problem. Just getting high-quality, comprehensive, accessible data related to drugs trials, EHRs, behavioral studies, public health records is hard. And crucially, these datasets are often riddled with bias.
Bias from stigma.
Stigma is a huge factor. EHR data, for instance, often under-documents substance use disorders, SUDs. Why? Stigma makes patients reluctant to disclose, and clinicians hesitant to record it. Plus, inconsistent screening practices or diagnostic overshadowing where another condition gets all the attention.
So the stigma directly leads to incomplete and biased medical records.
Directly. And the illicit status of many drugs means use is underreported, reliable data is scarce. Data on specific groups like older adults using illicit drugs or various underrepresented minorities can be especially patchy or missing altogether. This means AI models trained on this data won't work well for everyone.
Biased, incomplete data leads to inequitable AI. It's a recurring theme.
It is. Adding to the complexity is data heterogeneity. The data comes from everywhere: structured databases, semi-structured EHRs, completely unstructured doctor's notes, patient self-reports, law enforcement records, social media.
All in different formats using different terms?
It's exactly. Varying formats, definitions, quality standards, just integrating and harmonizing all this diverse data so an AI can learn from it is a massive technical challenge.
Like teaching an AI using a dozen different messy textbooks written in different languages.
That's not far off.
Right.
And again, stigma and underreporting are root causes. They create incomplete, biased data sets, which hobbles AI trying to predict SUD risk, treatment outcomes, or relapse. It creates that vicious cycle we talked about.
Yeah.
Stigma, bad data, biased AI, reinforces stigma or leads to unfair interventions, which further impacts data.
A really damaging feedback loop for data quality and fairness.
Definitely. Plus, behavioral data on drug use is just inherently messy and inconsistent. It's influenced by so many interacting factors: lifestyle, socioeconomic status, psychology, environment. Capturing all that systematically and quantitatively for AI is incredibly difficult.
Human behavior is just complicated.
And so, the overall reliability and diversity of many existing drug-related data sets are questionable. Lack of diversity, like in early psychedelic research that mostly involves specific demographics, really limits how well AI models trained on that data can generalize to the wider population. They might be less effective or even harmful for people not represented in the original data.
So the data problems aren't just technical glitches. They're deeply tied to social issues, history, behavior.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the broader social impact, how societal attitudes, laws, and policies influence AI development in this area.
How does something like the war on drugs or changing cannabis laws actually affect AI research?
Profoundly. They shape the entire environment, funding, data availability, what's even considered an acceptable AI application. Societal attitudes are key. We generally accept AI for developing pharmaceuticals, but there's huge stigma around AI related to illicit drug use.
Right. One is seen as helpful, the other potentially punitive.
Yes, exactly. The war on drugs mentality versus harm reduction approaches. These differing views influence research funding, public trust, and the ethics around data collection. Funding priorities often follow public health crises. The opioid crisis spurred NIH investment in AI for addiction. But prohibition and stigma historically choked funding and data access for things like cannabis or psychedelics, though that's slowly changing with legalization and shifting perceptions.
So societal priorities dictate where the research money flows for AI in this space.
Largely, yes. And legal frameworks create direct barriers. The fact that cannabis is still Schedule I federally in the U.S., despite state legalization, creates huge hurdles for researchers trying to access the substance, get approvals, standardize data. It directly impacts data availability and quality for AI.
Outdated laws can literally block the data needed for AI research.
They can make it incredibly difficult. Conversely, decriminalization or legalization changes how data is collected, what outcomes are measured. It opens new research avenues, but also brings new complexities, like dealing with data from a commercial market versus controlled studies. A shift towards a public health approach can allow for more open data, but then you might get biases from commercial interests.
It's complex however you slice it. And public trust.
Public trust is heavily shaped by these contexts. People generally trust AI for life-saving drugs, but AI for monitoring recreational use or predicting addiction risk, that can be met with real skepticism and fear, especially if it's seen as invasive, punitive, or an extension of discriminatory policing, particularly in communities historically targeted by drug laws.
If AI feels like Big Brother watching your drug use, trust is going to be low.
Understandably. The sources also raise this concept of a potential neurotechno-pharmaceutical complex.
That sounds vaguely ominous. What does it mean?
It describes a possible future convergence, where neuroscience, including drug effects, advanced AI, and powerful pharma-biotech interests come together. The potential outcome: AI being used to design psychoactive compounds aimed at modulating specific cognitive functions or subjective experiences, potentially going beyond treating illness into enhancement or altering mood, focus, creativity on demand.
AI designing mood regulators or focus enhancers.
Potentially. It blurs the lines between therapy, enhancement, and recreation. This raises huge ethical questions. What's a medical need versus a lifestyle choice? Who controls this capability? What are the long-term societal effects of being able to technologically fine-tune human experience?
That's a really profound question about the future of being human.
It highlights how deeply the study of drugs could influence not just our understanding, but the very design capabilities of future AI targeting the mind.
We've just explored how the world of drugs, from neuroscience insights to data headaches, is actively shaping AI development. It's a really complex feedback loop.
It truly is.
If you haven't yet, now's a great time to hit that subscribe button and follow us.
If you are interested in content like this, we bring you deep dives regularly. Knowing you're interested helps us keep exploring these complex, important topics.
Okay, let's move into the final sections, starting with Section 4, Ethical and Societal Implications. This convergence of AI and drugs has consequences far beyond the lab or the clinic, right?
Absolutely. This is where we zoom out and look at the broader impact. We're talking complex ethical dilemmas, real risks to equity and safety, huge challenges for regulators, and the absolutely crucial issue of public trust. AI can be a powerful force for good here, but it also carries a significant risk of making existing societal problems even worse if we're not careful.
Let's start with equity and access. How could AI in this field affect health equity?
Well, a major concern is that these innovations could inadvertently widen existing health disparities, not close them. We've talked about biased data AI trained on data that doesn't properly represent everyone by race, gender, income, location, etc. might simply not work as well for those underrepresented groups.
So the AI tools might be less accurate or effective for marginalized populations.
Exactly. This could perpetuate or even worsen inequities in care and health outcomes. Imagine an AI predicting drug response. If it wasn't trained on data reflecting a particular group's genetics or environment, its predictions for that group might be way off.
The data bias translates directly into unequal care potential.
Directly. There's a nuance with rare diseases, though. AI actually shows a lot of promise here, accelerating discovery for neglected conditions, analyzing sparse data, repurposing drugs. It could potentially bring hope to patients historically left behind by research.
That sounds like a positive for equity, helping overlooked patient groups.
It is a huge potential positive, but there's a flip side. If data from rare disease patients gets left out of the training for more general medical AI tools, say, a standard diagnostic AI, then those patients could face what the source calls discrimination by omission. The mainstream tools just aren't validated or effective for them.
So it creates an equity paradox. AI helps some underserved groups, but might deepen disparities for others if mainstream AI isn't inclusive.
That's the paradox, exactly. It's subtle, but important.
And then there's the straightforward issue of cost and access.
Right. These novel AI-designed drugs, sophisticated AI diagnostic platforms, they might come with high price tags. This could limit access for people with lower incomes, those in resource-poor countries, or the uninsured. It risks worsening the digital divide and creating new financial barriers to the best care.
So the cutting-edge treatments might only reach the privileged few.
That's a definite risk. On the other hand, paradoxically, some AI tools for addiction treatment, like screening tools, chatbots, remote monitoring, could actually increase access.
How so? By being cheaper or more available?
Potentially, yes. They could reach underserved, remote, or highly stigmatized populations who face barriers to traditional in-person care. But, and this is crucial, we have to ensure these tools are designed and implemented in ways that don't worsen existing socioeconomic or racial disparities in addiction treatment access and success rates. We need to be very intentional about equity.
So AI could democratize some care, but only with careful, equity-focused design and deployment.
Exactly. Now let's talk regulation and safety. This rapid advancement poses huge challenges for bodies like the FDA, EMA, WHO.
They must be struggling to keep up.
Immensely.
Yeah.
AI is evolving much faster than traditional regulatory cycles. This regulatory lag creates a risk. Potentially biased, unsafe, or inequitable AI tools could be deployed before adequate safeguards and oversight frameworks are in place.
And AI itself is a moving target, isn't it? The algorithmic drift.
That's a unique challenge. Machine learning models aren't static. They can change their performance over time as they encounter new data. And AI validated today might perform differently tomorrow. This demands continuous monitoring, revalidation, ongoing lifecycle management, something regulators are actively figuring out how to require, like the FDA's proposals for AI medical devices.
So you can't just approve an AI once, you have to keep watching it.
It adds a whole new layer of regulatory complexity. The black box problem also hits regulation hard. If regulators can't understand how an AI makes a recommendation, how can they confidently approve it or ensure its safety and fairness? There's increasing demand for interpretable AI in healthcare.
Trust requires transparency.
Absolutely. And ensuring data integrity and security is paramount for regulators, too. The quality, origin, and security of the vast sensitive health datasets used by AI are critical. Breaches or data corruption could have dire consequences.
And what about regulating the AI-designed drugs themselves?
That's another novel challenge. How do you validate the safety and efficacy of a compound whose very structure was conceived by an algorithm? Regulators need to assess the reliability of the AI's predictions and ensure the automated design process didn't introduce unforeseen risks. The FDA and others are actively developing risk-based frameworks for this.
It sounds like regulators are building the plane while flying it.
It's a very dynamic situation. Let's revisit bias and misuse these critical ethical concerns.
Algorithmic bias keeps coming up.
Because it's so fundamental. AI models inherit and can amplify biases in data related to race, gender, income, age, location. This leads to skewed predictions, potentially disadvantaging entire groups, causing misdiagnoses, unfair treatment, and eroding trust. And its interconnected societal bias leads to biased data collection, which trains biased AI, which informs decisions that institutionalize bias, leading to outcomes that feed back into biased data.
That self-reinforcing cycle of inequity, how do we break it?
It requires a conscious, multi-pronged effort, actively seeking diverse, representative data involving diverse, multidisciplinary teams, including ethicists, social scientists, in development, continuously monitoring and auditing AI for fairness, using specific fairness-aware algorithms, and demanding transparency. It's an ongoing commitment.
It needs active effort at every step.
And we must address the grave concern about misuse in creating harmful substances. The potential for AI's molecular design power to be turned towards creating novel, dangerous drugs or chemical weapons is real and demonstrated.
That 2021 experiment is hard to forget.
It highlights the urgency. Safeguards are essential. Maybe AI systems designed to flag dangerous compounds, strong international controls on AI-synthesized substances, perhaps licensing for chemists using these advanced tools, monitoring supply chains. The ethical principle of do no harm beneficence has to guide development here.
This really requires global security cooperation, not just health regulation.
It absolutely does. Finally, public perception and trust. These are the bedrock for integrating AI successfully and ethically.
How does the public currently feel about AI in medicine?
Trust is developing. Often, it's lower than trust in human experts, even when AI performs better on a specific task, like reading scans. Perception is influenced by many things. How much someone knows about AI, whether its decisions are explainable, media portrayals, personal experiences.
So familiarity and transparency help build trust.
They seem to. Major public concerns revolve around data privacy, the reliability of AI's diagnoses, and that lack of transparency, the black box. In addiction treatment, the anonymity of chatbots can be seen as a plus, reducing stigma. But if an AI gives bad or dangerous advice, that severely erodes trust and poses real risks.
One bad incident could damage trust significantly, especially for vulnerable users.
Definitely. And that dual-use potential AI for good drugs versus AI for bad drugs or surveillance can create a generalized trust deficit. Negative headlines about misuse can easily damage trust in beneficial applications. Even among healthcare professionals, there might be awareness but not deep understanding, highlighting a need for education to build informed trust.
Building and maintaining trust is clearly a complex, ongoing process.
It's absolutely fundamental. Without trust, the best AI tools won't be accepted or used effectively.
We've really unpacked the significant ethical and societal dimensions here. Equity, regulation, bias, trust. It's clear this is about far more than just the technology itself.
Indeed.
As we move towards looking at the future, remember, if you want to keep engaging with thoughtful analysis on these complex topics shaping our world, hit subscribe and follow Silent Minds Studio.
If you are interested in content like this, we discuss topics that intrigue us every day, and your support helps us continue doing that.
Okay, let's look ahead now. Section 5, Future Directions and Challenges. What's next on the horizon for AI and drugs?
This is where we try to gaze into the crystal ball a bit, looking at emerging technologies, the need for global cooperation, and the potential long-term societal shifts. It's about balancing the excitement for what's next with a clear-eyed view of the challenges.
What emerging technologies could reshape this landscape even further?
Well, the big one everyone talks about, though it's still early days, is quantum computing and drug design.
Quantum computing. How could that help?
Theoretically, quantum computers could tackle problems that are just too complex for even the most powerful classical computers and current AI. Things like simulating molecular interactions with extreme accuracy, predicting complex protein folding, modeling quantum effects crucial for designing drugs from scratch. Certain quantum algorithms are being explored for this.
Is this actually happening now?
It's mostly research and theoretical potential right now. Hybrid quantum classical models are being developed. The promise is immense, but practical quantum computers are still limited. From the NISQ era, noisy intermediate scale quantum, limited bits, errors, instability.
So the hardware isn't quite there yet for the really big drug design problems.
Not for widespread industrial use, no. The transformative impact might be further off. Near-term benefits might be more niche or focused on using quantum ideas to improve classical algorithms. Quantum-inspired computing related to this is quantum machine learning, QML.
Applying quantum principles to AI itself.
Right. Integrating quantum algorithms with machine learning to potentially enhance tasks like virtual screening or property prediction. People are investigating quantum neural networks. But again, the main challenges are the hardware limitations, accessing reliable quantum resources, scaling it up, and integrating it into existing workflows.
So quantum is a watch this space technology for now.
Definitely one to watch, but maybe not an immediate game changer. What is having a more immediate impact is the advancement of generative AI for novel therapeutic modalities.
Going beyond small molecule drugs.
Exactly. Gen AI is increasingly being used to design much more complex therapies, things like biologics, multi-specific antibodies that can hit multiple targets, engineered proteins, even potentially helping divine aspects of cell and gene therapies.
AI designing antibodies or poison gene therapies, that's a big leap in complexity.
It is. Initiatives like AI on Labs are specifically challenging researchers to use Gen AI for designing these complex biologics. It opens up powerful new ways to treat disease, but also brings fresh ethical and safety questions. How will these complex AI-designed biological agents interact with the human body? What about off-target effects? Long-term consequences of messing with complex systems like immunity or the genome. The line between natural and AI-designed biology gets very blurry.
That raises some really fundamental questions about interfering with biology at that level.
It certainly does. And all these powerful emerging technologies just underscore the critical need for global collaboration.
Why is international cooperation so vital here?
Because these issues, ethical AI use, consistent regulation, secure data sharing, preventing misuse, they transcend national borders. You need governments, regulators like FDA and MALHO, industry, academia, civil society, all working together, especially with the dual-use potential of AI and chemical synthesis that requires cooperation beyond health into security and non-proliferation realms.
So it's a geopolitical challenge, too.
It's a significant one. Getting unified global governance is tough when national interests might conflict. But organizations like the WHO are trying. They're fostering a global AI health ecosystem, developing ethical standards, promoting initiatives like the Global Initiative on AI for Health.
So global health bodies are trying to steer this responsibly.
They're providing crucial guidance. Harmonizing regulations is also key. If every country has different rules for AI in medicine, it stifles innovation, creates trade barriers, complicates trials. Efforts to align frameworks like those between the US, UK, and Canada for AI medical devices are really important for creating a predictable global environment.
Consistent rules would certainly help development.
Now let's think about the potential long-term impacts. This convergence is set to have profound, lasting effects.
How might healthcare look different in, say, 20 years?
AI could revolutionize it. Faster, more accurate diagnostics, truly personalized treatments, reduced administrative workload for doctors, better patient outcomes overall. The roles of professionals will likely evolve, AI augmenting human expertise, freeing up clinicians for complex decisions and patient interaction.
AI as a partner, not a replacement.
That's the optimistic view. But we need to consider different societal scenarios. Optimistically, AI drives breakthroughs for tough diseases, we get personalized, safer medicines, maybe better mental health support via AI tools.
Sounds great. The downside.
Pessimistically, AI's power is exploited. More potent, easier to make recreational drugs flood the market, maybe even novel chemical or biological weapons emerge. New public health crises or security threats.
The dual-use nightmare scenario.
There are also complex economic impacts. Some jobs might be displaced, routine lab work, some data analysis. But new roles will be created: AI developers, data scientists, ethicists, regulators. The overall effect is expected to be economic growth in life sciences, but the transition could be disruptive for some workers.
And cognitive or social impacts.
Concerns exist about over-reliance. Could doctors lose critical thinking skills if they depend too much on AI? Socially, could AI-mediated health interactions lead to isolation, if not balanced with human connection? The relationship between human intelligence and AI in this field could be symbiotic, enhancing us, or it could lead to atrophy if we delegate too much.
Could we become dumber by relying on smart machines? It's a provocative thought.
And equity and access remain a long-term worry. Will the benefits be shared fairly? Or will the digital divide, costs, and biases exacerbate global health inequities? Proactive measures are essential. This future demands adaptive policy and governance to manage risks, ensure ethics, maintain trust, and navigate huge societal shifts.
The challenges seem just as significant as the potential benefits in the long run.
They are. The path isn't predetermined. The sources leave us with some key future questions.
Like what new AI tech could be transformative in the next decade?
Beyond quantum, advanced Gen AI for complex therapies, privacy-enhancing tech like federated learning will be crucial. The convergence could bring hyper-personalized medicine, but also hyper-sophisticated misuse. Ethical frameworks need to co-evolve with the tech.
And ensuring ethical use globally.
That requires international standards, WHO, OECD, collaborative oversight, secure data sharing frameworks, capacity building in lower-income countries. Public engagement is a massive geopolitical and diplomatic effort needing sustained commitment.
Requires real global teamwork.
And the biggest question, the long-term societal risks versus benefits, breakthroughs versus inequality, job creation versus displacement, empowerment versus misuse, harmful substances, surveillance, enhanced skills versus de-skilling, trust versus erosion. The outcome depends on our choices now, governance, ethics, engagement, and a collective resolve for equitable well-being. Continuous vigilance regarding the dual-use nature is non-negotiable.
A powerful summary of the stakes. The future is something we have to actively build, not just wait for.
Exactly. Our actions now will shape that future.
We've covered the ethical terrain, the societal implications, the future possibilities, and the immense challenges. It's clear this convergence demands careful thought and action.
It really does.
As we wrap up this deep dive, if you found this exploration valuable, please consider subscribing and following Silent Mind Studio.
If you are interested in content like this, we discuss topics that intrigue us every day. Your engagement helps us continue this work.
Okay, let's quickly unpack everything we've covered in this pretty intense deep dive.
It's been a lot.
We navigated this really complex world where AI meets drugs, pharmaceuticals, and recreational substances. We saw AI revolutionizing drug discovery, speeding things up incredibly, transforming clinical trials, improving drug safety after approval, and driving towards that goal of personalized medicine.
Then we tackled the much murkier area of AI and recreational substances. We saw its potential in addiction treatment, predicting risk, personalizing rehab, monitoring recovery, but we also confronted the scary potential for AI to help create new, dangerous drugs and the serious ethical concerns around surveillance and privacy.
And we didn't forget the feedback loop, how drug research, especially neuroscience, and the big data challenges like bias and stigma are actually shaping AI development itself, plus how societal attitudes and laws influence the whole field.
Right. And finally, we wrestled with those crucial ethical and societal implications, the impact on equity, the massive hurdles for regulators, the dangers of bias and misuse, the absolute necessity of public trust. And we finished by looking ahead at emerging tech like quantum computing and stressing the need for global cooperation.
So what's the big takeaway here, if you had to boil it down?
I think what really stands out from all these sources is that this intertwining of AI and drugs, it's a defining development. And it has this incredibly clear dual potential. Massive upside for medicine and public health, but also significant risks of misuse, deepening inequality, and throwing up ethical dilemmas we're only just beginning to grasp.
So the path forward isn't about hitting the brakes on innovation.
No, probably not feasible or desirable. It's about steering it. Consciously, collectively, with responsibility, foresight, and always asking, how does this serve human well-being?
And that leads to a really provocative final thought, doesn't it, based on where this is heading?
Yeah, as AI gets smarter and our understanding of how drugs affect the brain gets deeper, we're approaching a point where AI might not just design drugs to treat illness, but potentially to deliberately alter specific aspects of human cognition or experience. Mood, focus, memory, maybe even empathy or creativity.
Wow. AI-designed cognitive enhancers or mood modulators.
What does that mean for how we define health or therapy or even human potential? How do we ensure that kind of power, the power to technologically fine-tune the human mind, is used for well-being, not for control, exploitation, or just unforeseen negative consequences? It pushes us to think really hard about what it means to be human in an age of intelligent machines and designer neurochemistry.
That is a profound question to leave our listeners with. A lot to think about as these technologies keep advancing. If you're curious about any of the points we discussed today, or if this deep dive sparked new questions for you, we'd genuinely love to hear from you. Be sure to ask in the comment section below so we can keep this conversation going. It's very exciting to explore these frontiers together.
Absolutely. Let's keep the discussion going.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive from Silent Mind Studio. We hope you feel a little more well-informed on this critical and frankly fascinating intersection.